Welcome to What Do You Think? My name is Bill Morse, and I want to welcome you to this edition of the show. Today is Thursday, May 6th, 2021, and I hope everybody had a nice Cinco de Mayo yesterday. I'll bring this a little closer. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Hope everybody had a good Cinco de Mayo yesterday. We celebrated by having Reuben sandwiches, but we did chase them down with margaritas. Margaritas. So there was an attempt to for a tip of the hat to our neighbors down south and our neighbors closer by who have a background or have come from probably one of the most challenged countries on earth today, Mexico. And but beautiful people. I was lucky enough to spend a summer there in Michoacan, and also visit border areas quite a few years ago, not recently, but the people are very hardworking, very strong faith, and right now they are facing a challenge from narcotraficantes who have taken control of various parts of the country and actually have more of a say than the elected government. So it's just a sobering note, but I just wanted to recognize that very rich culture, very rich faith, Catholic faith, also evangelical, and a lot of wonderful things: music, cuisine, hard work ethic that comes from our neighbor in the south, Mexico. So, felicidades por el día de el Cinco de Mayo, and I hope everybody had a good day yesterday. Today, beautiful weather, and I wanted to give a couple of updates. Uh, the spokesperson or the communications person responsible for Senator Leahy's office has contacted me, and we do expect to get some feedback on your questions for the senator next Thursday. So next Thursday at 5:45, please tune in. I hope to have some feedback, and as always, more questions are welcomed. We will be going through the questions next week, if there's any time, briefly, perhaps before the end of today's program. But I wanted to also give a couple of plugs to YouTube channels that I enjoy following that you might find of interest. One of them, sticking with faith, is Father Mark Goring, who has a parish in Ontario, not too far from Toronto. Mark Goring, Goring. He's a Catholic priest that has regular postings, and he has passion. He's a priest with passion. He's a priest with understanding. He's a good human being. He comes across as a good human being on his YouTube videos, and so I just wanted to give a little plug for Father Mark Goring, Goring, up in Toronto. Also, if you are a history buff, in particular World War II, but also Korean War and Vietnam War, the conflict, I would recommend Mark Felton, Felton, Mark Felton. He's from Britain, English, and he has maybe once a week postings on different events in World War II, but mostly in the European theater, less so with Pacific theater content, but mostly the conflict between different forces representing the Nazi government in Germany and American as well as British, Canadian, etc., our allies that fortunately were successful in uh, bringing an end to the expansionist movement and the movement itself of National Socialism. So, Mark Felton, if you're interested in uh, unbiased, straightforward, um, interesting research and film archives of battles, different situations in World War II, I would recommend him. And third, the last recommendation I wanted to pass along is social commentary from a garage mechanic. He lives in Virginia. I don't know his name. He just goes by his posting name, his channel name, and that is Barricade Garage. He started a couple of years ago posting videos, how-to videos on car repair, kind of like Scotty Kilmer, I believe is his last name. But Barricade Garage, his specialty is Jeeps, and he has started doing about a year or so ago comedy, satire comedy. And now he does live streams, social commentary. He's got a very unique perspective, having gone through foster homes, having spent time in prison, solitary confinement. He's now successfully working on his own. He has his own car repair business. He has a family. He has a young daughter. So an American success story. And so I would recommend Barricade Garage. Every couple of days he has a posting. And again, as I said, live stream postings over the last couple of weeks. But you can go back to his earlier postings over the last several months and see some of the satire he's produced by himself with different disguises and voices, obviously, looking at such things as the Black Lives Matter movement, the coronavirus response, and also our march towards one world government, international control over various factors of our lives. So very interesting. Barricade Garage. Mark Felton, World War II documentary, fantastic footage if you're a fan of the military or just of history, of what transpired, what people had to do, they had to endure. And then, of course, Father Mark Goring, Catholic priest up in Ontario. Those three posters I would strongly recommend. And what I wanted to do today, at least part of the broadcast today, is last Saturday there was a field flea market outside at the truck terminal across from the entrance to the Bellows Falls High School. Last Saturday I was there, and one of the things I like to do is go through old paperwork, especially local newspapers that are 50, 60 years old. And I came across an issue, the March 6th, 1966 paper from the Times Reporter here in Bellows Falls, serving Bellows Falls and Springfield. This is the paper right here, the Times Reporter from March 6, 1966, already 55 years ago. And I wanted to read a couple of articles and ask questions. Hopefully some of you will be able to call in with answers about articles that appeared in just this one paper, one day out of 365. And I want to see if you can come up with parallels or see the parallels that struck me in looking at these articles. Some of these articles, in a way, could have been written yesterday with some of the action, for lack of a better word, not perhaps turmoil would be a good word, that's occurring in the country right now. And so if you would indulge me, I'm going to quickly read through a couple of these articles, stop, and then maybe ask a question. And I hope you'd like to participate, because this is indeed a call-in program. The value of this program rests largely on your shoulders. It's participatory. and you have the Zoom numbers down below. You call the 929 number, then you will be asked for a meeting code, a meeting number, and then I believe a passcode. It's complicated, but trust me, I hope that it will be worth your effort. So anyway, the lead story in for Wednesday, March 16th, I was wrong, March 16th, 1966. And by the way, the newspaper then was 10 cents. 10 cents an edition, 10 cents a day, and a newspaper boy would or girl would deliver this to your doorstep 7 days a week. A newspaper boy or girl. Normally, you would be 11, 12 years old, maybe 8 years old, delivering this. Again, the newspaper is gone, as well as this type of activity for a young boy or girl to earn some pocket money. It's unfortunate, but that's what I guess you would call that progress. So anyway, the lead article in this Times Reporter from Bellows Falls, Springfield is Los Angeles Watts District explodes again in wild rioting. A wild riot broke out Tuesday in the Watts area of southeast Los Angeles. Early reports indicated 2 persons may have been killed. Police aid more than 600, police reported more than 600 Negroes. And again in 1966, what you called people was different. Some people now say person of color, black person, whatever. Negroes were rampaging in the heart of the depressed area, hub of the bloody riots last August that claimed 34 lives. We're talking about August of 1965, the first riot, that claimed 34 lives and caused an estimated $40 million in damage and destruction. A massive riot squad of more than 100 policemen were sent to the area immediately and sealed off an area of 12 square blocks. Police said the incident began when a Negro man threw a rock at a car driven by a white man, a school teacher. The school teacher was slightly hurt, officers said, and got out. Police arrived on the scene and arrested the Negro. Police Inspector John Kinsling said the arrest took place at 103rd and Anzac Streets near Jordan High School, just as school was letting out. Now, this is key. This is important. Remember, this happened before social media, before cell phones. There was no, if you contacted somebody, it was telephone, landline, or voice, word of mouth. A crowd of teenagers collected, Kinsling said, and soon began shouting taunts and hurling threats at the police. Suddenly, the crowd went out of control, he said, and began coursing up and down the street, throwing rocks at cars. One car was overturned and set on fire. Police said the mob attacked 2 truck drivers. I'm thinking of the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles in 91, was it? Truck driver was severely injured, pulled from his cab. 2 truck drivers and 1 escaped, but the other, unidentified, was shot and possibly killed. We're talking 1966. Looting of stores began soon after the arrest. First reports indicated with a shop on 104th Street ransacked, and there's a break in the paper, just 2 minutes after the outbreak. The looting mushroomed, and reports indicated there were 3 shootings, 2 stabbings, and a growing flow of victims to nearby Oak Park Hospital. The riot's birth and growth provided a close and ominous parallel to last August's incredibly devastating carnage. Again, they're referring to August of 1965, the big riot in Watts. 6 days of disastrous rioting last August 11th through 16th left 34 persons dead, more than $40 million in private property damage. In that Holocaust, notice the word Holocaust. This is from the Associated Press, Los Angeles. So again, choice of words is important. It says something. In this, that Holocaust, rioters overturned automobiles, looted stores, and set business buildings on fire. The result in charred, wrecked buildings looked like wartime bomb destruction and shattered the main business street through Watts. That's the end of the article. My father grew up in Compton. Compton is just south of Watts. And my grandmother, his mother, remained in Compton after he left. She remained in Compton until 1969. After these riots in 65 and 66, many black people left the area because, first of all, the businesses were destroyed. If businesses are destroyed, what are you going to do for prescriptions, for laundromats, for groceries? Your basics aren't there. You have to take a bus into another district. And so many people left Watts and came into Compton. And this is where you have to be very careful with private businesses. And this was common practice. Realtors would come into Compton and say that blacks are coming. Again, Compton was all white. My father grew up in a white neighborhood, Maple Avenue. No, Burris, South Burris, thank you. 301 South Burris is where Grandma lived, because I used to write her letters after some prodding from my father. And so she saw the neighborhood through these, I'm going to say, shady and criminal business practices, whereby they tell white people, blacks are coming into the area, you better sell now. So they scare people into selling something they would not have done on their own low. And then, lo and behold, they turn and they canvass areas of Watts where people are leaving, and they sell the same house to a black family at a markup. And so the markup may be $20,000, $30,000. They profit that, there's a profit there. You had middlemen who were realtors. They would buy the house cheap and sell the house at a much higher price. And so this happened house by house by house, so that by the time summer of '69 came around, my grandmother was the last white person on the block. She stayed there another year up until the point where two guys came in, tied her up, smacked her around a little bit, and rifled through the house. She had good neighbors. This was an anomaly. These two were from outside the area, but now that the area had changed, it was easier for them to blend in, right? Social profiling. And so, fortunately, she wasn't hurt. They just scared the hell out of her. She was found by neighbors. They untied her. They helped her put the household back together. They helped her with the police interview. I don't know if the two fellows who tied her up and ransacked the house were ever caught. I imagine eventually they were caught doing something else. But she left and she sold the house. And in the 80s, I actually went back with some cousins. We visited the house. Wow. We visited the house and talked with the people that were there. And the neighborhood is well maintained. The thing you notice now is, though, bars on the window and fences where there were no fences. So, but I just wanted to add this, that my personal experience, our family's personal, my grandmother's personal experience in the wake of these riots. All right, so one other article that was also in the paper. Oh, all right, one other article which is interesting. Negro deputy appointment reaction mixed. This is in a small town in Alabama, again, 1966. Utah, I'm going to say. Eutaw. If I'm mispronouncing the name of the town, I apologize. Eutaw. Utah, Alabama. Again, Associated Press provided most of these stories that appeared in the Times Reporter, as in most newspapers. Appointment of Greene County's first Negro deputy sheriff was lauded by white leaders and condemned by civil rights forces Tuesday. Interesting. I'm going to repeat that. The appointment of Greene County's first Negro deputy sheriff was lauded by white leaders and condemned by civil rights forces Tuesday. There's something between the lines there. The deputy, wealthy cattleman Howard Brown, said he was well received on his first day. I have had several congratulatory calls, he said, from both white and colored. He's being quoted here. The 45-year-old rancher said. And when I walked down the street this morning, several whites stopped by and shook my hand. Brown was hired Monday by Sheriff William E. Lee. It's very interesting. Again, I'm not sure why civil rights representatives would condemn the appointment of this man as a deputy sheriff, but they did. So, interesting. And then I have one more article. We're going to go to sports. And I want you to tell me what this man's name is today. All right, where are we? Okay. Again, we're in 1966. Okay. Sponsors withdraw from Clay radio broadcast. This is again New York, but again Associated Press. We're in the Times Reporter, Wednesday, March 16th, 1966. A lack of advertising sponsors has forced the cancellation of plans to radio broadcast the heavyweight fight between Cassius Clay and George Chuvalo in Toronto, March 29th, 1966. Michael Mallitz, Executive Vice President of Main Bout Incorporated, set up to handle radio and television for the fight, said Tuesday the fight would not be carried by radio stations in this country, although some Canadian stations would broadcast it. This is why they lost the sponsors, the ads. Clay's controversial statements about his reclassification to 1A draft status, which means he could go where the military sends him. There was a draft. You became 18, and you got a tap on the shoulder via mail that you were going into the military. The draft was obligatory for most people. And his comment was, I've got nothing against the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong were the people we were fighting against in Vietnam. The Viet Cong were in the north, infiltrating the south, and we were trying to keep a very fledgling, struggling democracy alive in South Vietnam. I've got nothing against them. Viet Cong were his comments, and this was blamed in part for the lack of sponsor interest. It was something the various companies didn't want to get involved in. Very controversial, the Vietnam War. The long search for a fight site also had an adverse effect, he said. Initially, ABC, or the American Broadcast Company, was negotiating with Main Bout to carry the fight. Another ABC spokesman said his company decided not to broadcast the bout after preliminary inquiries indicated that there was a lack of public and sponsor interest. Public interest, I doubt. Sponsor interest, probably. He said the decision was made before Clay's Vietnam outburst. Notice the use of the word outburst. All right, so there's a statement. There's an editorial comment in this report. Mallett said Tuesday ABC failed to meet the price for negotiating rights, and he then asked an independent producer to explore the possibility of selling the program to advertisers and lining up an independent network of stations, something that would happen later with cable TV. Again, we're in 1966. You had 3 networks, and that was it. That failed when many of the 41 advertisers who were offered sponsorship said they didn't want to become involved in the Clay controversy. How sensitive these companies were then. Clay originally was to have opposed Ernie Terrell, but Terrell pulled out of the fight last week because of a contract dispute, and Chavala was substituted instead. Main Bout also is running into problems on closed-circuit television coverage. Originally, some 170, 180 theaters in the country had agreed to carry the fight. You would go to the Opera House, for example, to see the fight, or the Ellis Theater or something like that, to carry the fight. But all the major theater chains now have dropped out of the agreement. Interesting. Only 3 or 4 independent theaters of the 20 initially lined up in New York City remain. So these were non-United Artists theaters because there was a monopoly, there was a chain. Mallett's declined to estimate the number of theaters definitely committed because it was probably sinking. But anyway, sponsors withdraw from Clay radio broadcast. What is Cassius Clay's name now? He changed his name, and I want to know what he changed his name to. There's got to be a couple of fight people, even if you're not interested in boxing. This man was very important in that he was a world champion. He was very much in the American mindset in the 60s and 70s. And so I'm just curious if any of the viewers know his name today. And you can call in with that answer, and there's maybe 1 minute. So that's it. I just thought it would be interesting. Again, parallels between what happened in 1966 and was reported on March 16th and what we've been experiencing in this country for the last year or so, and to a much minor degree, a smaller degree, many months prior to that. So we are just about out of time, so I'm going to say Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was the name of the boxer who refused to go to war in Vietnam because he had nothing against the Viet Cong. Again, the Viet Cong were bringing communism into the peninsula, and under Ho Chi Minh, and they were ultimately successful. In 1966, who was the president? Initials LBJ. He took over after President Kennedy was assassinated, being Kennedy's vice president. Lyndon Baines Johnson. He didn't run again in 68 because of the war and also civil rights issues, especially when Dr. Martin Luther King said, you got to do something about the war in Vietnam because we can have equality, we can have access to America, but America's going down going down the wrong path in addressing the expansion of communism. So anyway, that's it for this edition of What Do You Think? I want to thank you for tuning in. Again, next week, we'll be getting some feedback I'll be sharing feedback from Senator Patrick Leahy over your questions. And please tune in, and if you do have questions that we have not yet raised, I would hope that you would call in and get some feedback, some answers from the senator. So I want to wish you a good weekend, and thank you once again for tuning in to What You Think. And my name is Bill Morse, and I wish you all a good evening and God bless.